Well, g'day Harbour Youth, this is Tom Batty, and this week we are having a special guest along. We have...
I'm Cass.
Nice to have you, Cass. This week we are looking at a film review, Wonder Woman. Now, I haven't seen it, but Cass, you have?
I have, and I loved it.
Okay, tell us more. Where does this movie fit in? What's the context?
So Wonder Woman is a film that is an origin story of her character within the DC universe.
Which is different to the Marvel
It is different
universe.
to Marvel, so
Yeah.
we're talking about Batman and Superman and the Dawn of Justice heroes.
Yeah, not Elsa. Got it.
No, and so it tells that story of how she came into contact with mankind and how she became a superhero in that sense.
Okay. Now, this story has a few similarities that you were telling me before with a particular biblical figure.
Yeah, so when I saw the film, I was really struck by how similar the character of Wonder Woman is to what I would call a female Jesus or a Christological character. It reminded me of the way in which we see Jesus from the Bible.
Okay, is that because she has long hair and she has a beard and she wears a toga and sandals?
She's quite the opposite of that.
Okay.
She's quite beautiful and strong and feminine.
Yep.
But that's not what I'm talking about. It was actually not her appearance, but her characteristics of love and compassion and a desire to see the lost saved. But there were more elements to that actually reminded me of the Jesus story.
Yeah, so she has a similar origins, or there's a few things that match with the beginnings of Jesus' life on earth and her.
Yeah.
Tell us about them.
Yeah, so Wonder Woman was actually moulded from clay and had life breathed into her by the god Zeus.
Yeah.
And she was born for a purpose, and the purpose was to save mankind from the evils of war and a particular god named Ares. But the idea of her birth was to protect mankind, and so that does correlate with Jesus' birth. If you think about the Christmas story, Jesus came down to earth from heaven in order to save mankind.
And then after she was kind of sent into the world, she noticed a few things about humanity, which is kind of interesting, and a few things that we as Christians really want to agree with.
Yeah, so the idea that mankind is broken, and that the world in which we live is broken, and that's corruptible, and that there is evil in the world. She definitely noticed all of those things about mankind. She wept for the atrocities that were happening, that men were causing on one another. And because she was, in a sense, a lot like Jesus, she was in the world of mankind, but not of the world, in that she was a god and human. She was able to identify and characterize and criticize what man was doing in the world to one another, which was not good.
It kind of reminds me of a few times in Jesus' life where he sat on the hill opposite Jerusalem and cried for them, and yearning for them to be saved.
Yeah, and there's a couple of scenes actually in the film where she is just observing, walking through communities where people have been decimated by war and by the evil that man does to one another, and you can just really see that just anguish that she is experiencing and the grief because of that. Yeah.
And so she in a similar way comes into the world, sees that it's messed up, and goes to save it. And so there's a number of similarities there. In a second we'll think about the few things that aren't quite the same with her and Jesus, but are there any other similarities that are worth noting that were intriguing or interesting from the movie?
I think it's primarily that she was born to do this mission. She was born to bring peace. She was born to bring freedom to mankind, and that is exactly what Jesus came to do. He is God on earth, come to save us from the worst of ourselves.
When you were watching it, were you thinking, yeah, go Jesus, during the time, or was it only afterwards that you were kind of reflecting on it, thinking, man, there were so many similarities there?
No, as I was watching it, I completely thought, man, this is just like Jesus. That scene, there's a moment where she's done something heroic in a community, in a little village, and the people are just crowding around her and then following her.
Yeah.
And it just reminded me so much of the times when a crowd is following Jesus and they just want to touch him to get a part of how great he is. So yeah.
Almost like that woman in both Mark and Luke, who she reaches out just to touch the edge of Jesus' cloak. Were there people like reaching out just to touch the edge of Wonder Woman's skirt?
Yes, they were trying to touch her. Yes, and thank her, and yes, they were just amazed at her at her greatness. And again, that just reminded me so much of Jesus. And when he was alive, people were amazed at his teaching and his knowledge, and his ability to just speak to people's hearts.
But we shouldn't worship Wonder Woman.
No.
Because she's ultimately a stuff-up and a failure. Is that right?
Well,
what are the things that don't match up with Jesus?
Yeah, so Wonder Woman is not ultimately able to save humanity from themselves or from their own actions. She can protect to a certain extent. She can stop certain atrocities happening. But at the end of the day, while yes, men are redeemable, she can't actually do the act of redemption. She can't save the world and mankind by sacrificing herself. I mean, Jesus sacrificed his own life as a ransom for the world. She can't do that, and she certainly doesn't do that in the film. And she recognizes actually that mankind can't save themselves, and that man won't change, even though they have the potential for good in them. Inherently, they just won't change.
So similar mission, but ultimately unable to fulfill it, but because she's not one of us. She's not fully human, and she can't stand in our place.
Yeah, so she is a human, and she is God. She was the daughter of Zeus, who is a god, but she's not like Jesus. She is not fully human and fully God, all in the same. She's not perfect, although they describe her in a certain way of being perfect, but she's not sinless, and she cannot stand in our place to sacrifice for what we have done in rebelling against God. It's just impossible for her to do.
Cass and I were talking before about a verse that Wonder Woman reminded of us of, and we came up with Luke 19:10, which you can see there says, "The Son of Man came to seek and to save what was lost." Very similar to Wonder Woman. However, ultimately she wasn't able to do it because she can't stand in our place. Where if we look to this one from Mark chapter 10 verse 45, we can see it tells us something a little bit better. The Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, right? Similar to Wonder Woman so far. And also to give his life as a ransom for many. Wonder Woman cannot do that. She cannot stand in our place. Only Jesus can. If you want to know more, don't watch the movie. Read the book. Catch you later, Harbour Youth.
See ya.